Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for the Wisconsin Department of Revenue My Tax Account New User Webinar. My name is Tom Rabine, and I'm the Quality Assurance Coordinator in our Customer Service Bureau. I'll be presenting today along with Nicole Buchholz, a business tax specialist in the Customer Service Bureau. Among other things, today we're going to cover logging into my tax account, give an overview of key features of my tax account, and show you examples of filing and paying sales and use tax returns and withholding tax returns. We'll also walk through an example of filing a withholding tax reconciliation along with a W-2 and 1099 on my tax account. If you have any questions during today's webinar, please type them in the questions pane and an agent will reply to you individually throughout the webinar. If you have questions in the future or have questions that may require more time to research or answer, please go to our website or call or email the Wisconsin Department of Revenue customer service team. A recording will be available on the Wisconsin Department of Revenue training page shortly after the webinar. We've planned this webinar for about 1 hour, so let's get started. For today's webinar, we'll be working in a training and testing environment, and there may be some differences in screen appearance. Please be aware if you're working along in my tax account, you're in a live environment, and we ask that you don't submit any returns or requests that you complete in this webinar. If you accidentally submit a return or request, please contact customer service at 608-261-5338 for assistance deleting the return or request. Before we log in, we'd like to point out some helpful resources you can access from the login page. First, you can ask Dory, our chatbot assistant, a question about my tax account. Secondly, we have training videos available. Let me scroll down a little bit and we'll click on the link that says Business Videos from the Resources panel. The videos available range from general, such as an overview, to specific, such as how to file and pay sales and use tax. Let's close that and go back to the login page. And let's log into my tax account. We'd like to mention that although you may have until the last day of the month to file your return, it might be beneficial to try and log into my tax account ahead of time. That way, if you have any difficulty with receiving a security code, you'd then have time to resolve any issues before filing and paying taxes. Internal servers and the security settings of your business email system may delay or even prevent you from receiving the security code via email. If your business has such email filters, you'll want to add MTA support at wisconsin.gov as a trusted email address. Contact your computer support area or your email provider for assistance. The email address again is mtasupport at wisconsin.gov. Please don't send questions to this email address, as this email box isn't monitored for responses. It's only used for electronic delivery of security codes. Now, if this is your first time logging into my tax account, you would now be asked to set up a delivery method for your security code via text, email, or Authenticator app. If you do have it set up to receive your security code as text or email, the default will be to send it via text. If you wish to receive an email, click on the More Security Code Delivery options to receive that security code via email. Prior to clicking Confirm, after putting in the security code, we're going to check the box to trust this device. By doing so, a subsequent entry of a security code wouldn't be required unless you log in with a computer that you've never used before or you've deleted your cookies. In our training and testing environment, we have a populate option that will just put in a security code. Of course, you would receive your security code via text or email. Let's click on confirm to log in. Before we go over specific sections of my tax account, let's discuss general navigation. Just a couple of points I'd like to make. If you do click on a link, and I'll just click on view periods for the business tax registration account. And if you want to go back a page, you can usually go back by clicking on this link here, or you can use your browser's back arrow. Also, if you are completing an activity in my tax account or wherever you're in my tax account, if you wish to return home, there really isn't a home button. But if you hover over the words my tax account, you'll see that it says return to home screen. This is how you can return home, by clicking on the words my tax account. All right, let's take a look at each of these tabs. And we're going to start first with the favorites tab. And once I click on the favorites tab, there's a manage button. So you'll notice that when we logged in, there were several accounts that were listed here. If your duties only include, for example, filing sales and use tax, if you want to favorite that account, that's where the favorites tab comes in. You can click on manage, click on the sales and use tax, click OK, and that way when you log in, you're only going to see that account. You still have access to all of the accounts from the summary tab, but you'll only see this first account when you log in. Let's undo that. And let's click back to the summary tab. So the summary tab shows us that there's 3 accounts listed. The business tax registration account is listed. And while that's not a tax account necessarily, this is where you would go to pay your business tax registration fee upon initial registration, or to pay the $10 fee that's due every 2 years. This particular account has a sales and use tax account, and you can see on the home page here that they are a quarterly filer. And one of the key links here is file pay view returns, and we'll be using that a little bit later on when we file and pay sales and use tax. They also have a withholding tax account that also is a quarterly filer, and we'll be also looking at filing and paying withholding tax amounts later on in the webinar. Let's click on the Action Center tab. And this tab will show that if you have any unread messages or unread letters, then I'll click on the Settings tab. One of the things I'd like to show you on the Settings tab is if you're receiving notices from us via paper, if you wish to change the mail delivery option to electronic, you can click on the word paper, and then I'll ask you if you want to change that to electronic. Just click the radio button for electronic. Please read the terms and conditions carefully and save, and then you'd begin to receive your notices electronically. For the purposes of the webinar, we'll just keep it at paper for now. And after the Settings tab is the More tab. Let's take a look at that. And there are a number of different panels here, and let's take a look at the Payments and Returns panel first. The first link is Manage Payments and Returns. Now, while this link sounds like it's where you would go for filing return, it's more useful for researching past payments and returns. We'll recommend for filing and paying a return to click on the specific account to file, and we'll look at an example of that in a few moments. Other items here, you can request a payment plan. You can view a payment breakdown if you make one large payment that gets broken up between different accounts. You can pay your real estate transfer fees here, and you can view or cancel scheduled payments. Let's stop there a second. This particular link could be useful if you make a payment and it has not processed yet. You would use this link, and let me click on it, to cancel that payment. So again, if the payment has not processed yet, you can cancel that payment and resubmit it if you wish. You will also see this link at different spots within My Tax Account, so this isn't the only place that you need to go to cancel a payment if needed. The next panel is the Letters panel, and let's click on the View Letters link. And what you see here is a copy of the registration certificate for the business and a copy of the seller's permit. So if you do need a copy of your seller's permit, a lot of times it is in your Mail tab, or if you do need a copy and it isn't in there, please give us a call and we can push it to your My Tax account. Let's take a look at the Messages panel. I'll click on View Messages. Here you can go and take a look at the messages that we've sent to you. And here's where you can go to manage email subscriptions so you can manage the communication that you receive from the department. The next panel is the Submissions panel. And we're going to take a look at this a couple of times during the webinar, because if I click on it now, there's a couple of things here in the Process tab. Where you can use the Submissions panel is if you submitted a return today, for example, and it hasn't processed yet, you can go to the Submissions panel to delete or modify that submission. So after we file and pay a sales and use tax return, if we come back and take a look at this, it would show a pending tab in addition to the processed and deleted tab. The Enter W-2 1099 information link will go into more detail when Nicole talks to you in more detail about the withholding tax account. She'll show you an example of how to submit a W-2 and or 1099 from My Tax account. And in the Names and Addresses panel, if I click on Manage Names and Addresses, you can add a DBA for the business, and you can update an address for the business as well. Let's head back. Alrighty, and that's the More tab. Let's return home. And next, what we're going to take a look at is the Manage My Profile link in the upper right-hand portion of the page. Let's click on that. And what you see here is probably standard fare for any type of online account. You'll see that your username is listed here, your name, the email address that is associated with your profile. Please keep that updated as often as possible. Contact phone number. Here's where you can go to change your password. So you can update your password anytime from the profile page and update your secret question. And here you can go and change how you receive that security code from us. So if you need to change that, I'll just take a quick look at it here. If you need to change it, you would actually click on the X here, delete the old delivery phone number and enter in a new one. Same thing for an email address. Delete the old one and enter in a new one. All right, so on the Manage Profile page, you'll see the Action Center tab again, and then also the More tab. Now let's take a close look at the More tab. There's a lot of stuff here. So the first link is Request Access to an Account. And this is where you would add access to an additional tax account. And I'll just describe a short scenario there for you why you may be using that. So for example, as a new business, you may just be registered for sales and use tax. As your business grows, you now need to hire employees. So you'd register for a withholding tax account via the online registration on the Department of Revenue website. Once you've been assigned a withholding tax account, this link is where you'd add the withholding account to your existing My Tax Account profile. So let's take a look at that. You would click on request access to an account. This is a business tax account that we're looking at. And then I'll click on next. And then it takes you to a verification page. So what we would want you to do is verify a piece of information to prove that you're associated with the business. And to do that, in our example, we would choose from the tax accounts available here, sales and use tax. And then I would input a total tax due from a prior return. And if I click here on the info link, and that amount should be from one of the 3 most recently filed returns. So if you're able to enter in that amount and submit this, you would gain access immediately to any additional business tax accounts. Or you can enter in a letter ID from a notice that we sent you. And again, if I click on the info link here, we'll get a little bit more information. Of these letters that are listed here for a common business tax account, that might be the business tax registration greeting letter that we send you when you initially registered for a business tax with us. One other common one might be a notice of estimated tax. That letter ID would also work as verification to prove that you're associated with the business. And then once you put in the letter ID, and this is an either or, if you put in the letter ID instead, click on next and submit, you would gain immediate access to any additional business tax accounts for the business. All right, let's head back to that page. And the next link is request access to a third-party account. So this is where a third-party preparer would go to request access to your tax accounts. But this would also be used by individuals that own multiple entities and would like to manage all of the entities under a single My Tax Account profile. Let's look at the Payment Sources panel and the Manage Payment Sources link. I'm going to click on that, and you'll see that there aren't any saved payment sources here right now. If you had a saved payment source, this is where it would be shown. So this link can be important if you do change financial institutions and you need to delete a payment source. This is where you go to do that, so you wouldn't use that payment source by mistake when filing and paying a business tax return. So I could add a new payment source here, but what I'm going to do instead is I'll add it on the payment page when I pay the sales and use tax return in a few moments. And here we have the same links. We've looked at those already. So let's go to the Manage Access panel. And the first link there is Manage My Access. And when I click on that, it'll show that I have access to all 3 accounts, which would be normal. But one of the key items here is it lists myself as the master account holder for the My Tax account. So that means that I have control over any third parties, for example, or any other users on the My Tax account. So if you're logged in, or when you do log in, it's possible that you could see Account Manager here. The master account user has control over any account manager settings. Let's go back. Manage my users access. This function isn't used a lot. It would really only be used by maybe a larger accounting firm. As an example, if they would have like 50 employees servicing 1,000 client accounts, they can create groups of clients and assign those groups to specific employee user accounts that they create. So not a wide usage for this link. Most people are going to use the third-party access to gain access to client accounts. Manage other users' access. So if you are the master account holder for the business, you will see this page. If you're account manager, you would not. So here you can see that there is an account manager, Tina's account. So as the master user, I could limit or change Tina's access to the business. The other thing that a master account user will see is manage third-party access. If I click on that, you can see that they do indeed have a third-party preparer hired to file either their sales and use tax or withholding tax. And as the master account holder, if I no longer use this third-party preparer, I could delete access for that third-party preparer. Delete my profile. So if you no longer need a My Tax account, you can close your account by clicking on Delete My Profile. And close accounts. You'll see this link at various places in My Tax account. If I click on that, you're not closing the business with this link, you're closing a specific business tax account type. So you're going to choose the reason that you're closing that particular tax type, and you'll click on that tax account. So if I no longer have employees, I could click on the withholding tax account, enter a closure date, and just close the withholding tax account if I wish. And let's go back. The search submissions link is here. You'll also notice that we saw that earlier underneath the More tab from the home page. And here we have log on activity, which shows just the activity for this particular My Tax account. All right. So let's head back to the home page. And I think it's time that we file and pay a return. And what we're going to be doing is filing and paying a sales and use tax return. So the link that we're going to use here is File, Pay, View Returns. But notice from the account level or from the customer level page here that you can also see that these links are here that we've also looked at previously. But let's click on File, Pay, View Returns. And before we actually file, I'm going to point out a couple other links here. Filing and payment history. So if I click on that, you'll see the amount of sales and use tax that your liability was for the period and how much was paid. So if you have a long history here, you can search. So if you just want to look at sales and use tax returns for tax year 2023, for example, you can set those search parameters, but this is a good way to look at your filing and paying history. View account attributes, it just kind of tells you the account number, when it was started, and the filing frequency. Appeal. So if for some reason you do get maybe a late filing fee, for example, that is appealable electronically via My Tax account via this page. As you can see here, there's not a lot to it. We'll ask you to choose the appeal period that you're appealing, and also give an explanation. You can also close the account, and we already looked at that. Request extension to file. Keep in mind a couple of things when filing for an extension. The request needs to be done prior to the due date, and the payment is still due timely. View or cancel scheduled payments. We already looked at that from a different page as well. So, we said earlier that this is a quarterly filer, so we're in the second quarter right now, so we really wouldn't be filing and paying the second quarter in May. But for the purposes of the webinar, let's just make believe that the second quarter is over and that we're filing and paying the sales and use tax. So So the second quarter doesn't end until the end of June, so we're kind of making believe it's July here, but it'll still serve the purpose of showing how the sales and use tax return works. So I'll click on File Now for the second quarter. And if you take a look at this page, there are a number of helpful hints here on the page or filing tips. You do have the ST12 video, which is a 4-minute video that shows how to file and pay sales and use tax. You've got the form instructions link to the common questions page for this ST12 form that we're going to be filling out, common sales and use tax questions, and the link to the sales and use tax rate chart on our website, which will list all of the counties in Wisconsin and the city of Milwaukee, and whether or not they have any sales tax and when that sales tax was initiated. The first question is, do you plan to report 0 on every line? So if you have a period where you didn't have any sales, we still expect you to file a return, even if it is in the amount of 0. So I'll just show you briefly how to do that. If you had 0 sales for that period, click on Yes, click on Next, and you'll see that it just fills out all zeros for you, and then you can go ahead and submit that. But for our example, we will submit a sales and use tax return with sales. So I'll switch that back to no, and I'll click on Next. And let's put some sales in here. So we'll just use a nice round figure, make it easy to follow. You would put any subtractions in lines 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'll just mention that for line 5 other, this is where you would put the amount of sales tax if indeed this $50,000 included the sales tax in it. But you'll notice that my tax account starts calculating automatically for you. So this is looking good. Let's click on Next. Purchase is subject to state use tax. We'll leave this at 0 for the purposes of the webinar. If you have more questions on use tax, you can click on the link here, which will take you to the common questions page for use tax. Let's click on Next. Do you have any county tax to report? So most counties have a county tax nowadays. So what it will also show you is that this particular company has a location in Milwaukee, so that permit location in Milwaukee is going to be listed here. And we'll put our sales in for county sales tax in Milwaukee County. And for the purposes of the webinar, we'll just put in all of our sales in Milwaukee County. But if you have other counties where you had sales and you needed to divvy up this $50,000, just click in the blank box below Milwaukee. So if you click in this box here, you'll get a drop down, and then you can start adding as many counties as you wish up to all of the counties that have a county sales tax in Wisconsin. So for the purpose of the webinar, we'll just leave it with Milwaukee County. But again, you can add as many counties as you wish. We didn't have any purchases subject to county to state sales tax, and we don't have any subject to county use tax either. Let's click on Next. Do you have any city of Milwaukee tax to report? Well, we have a location in the city of Milwaukee, so I'm going to answer yes to that. If you chose no and you attempted to continue, you would have to, there would be a text box there where you'd have to explain why you might have sales in the county of Milwaukee, but not in the city of Milwaukee. But let's just say all of our sales were in the city of Milwaukee. And the system will automatically keep calculating. And it will take us to a summary page here. So you can see it's already calculated our state, county, and city sales tax. And it's also estimated a discount. So if you file and pay on time, you do receive a discount for filing and paying on time. Do you want a confirmation email? Let's go with yes. And we're ready to submit. So let's do that. I'll click on OK. And now we have successfully submitted a sales and use tax return. We get a confirmation number for that, but what we haven't done yet is we haven't made a payment. So for sales and use tax, you're going to get two confirmation numbers. You'll get one for filing the return and one for paying the return. So I'm going to click on make a payment. And I'll choose sales and use tax. And in our case, we can choose yes here to have it apply to a specific period because we did file for the second quarter. I'll choose the second quarter as the quarter that we're paying for. And then it asks us, how do we want to pay? You can create a printable voucher. If you choose this option, a voucher will be created and be put into your letters tab, so you can print that off and mail it with a check. Other payment methods, there's a fee involved with the other payment methods if you're paying by credit card or Apple Pay or PayPal. But most people choose bank account. There aren't any fees involved and the money will be debited from your checking or savings account. And that's what we're going to show here. So I'm going to click on next. And then I'm going to add a payment source. In our testing and training database, I can have it populate a routing number and financial institution. Of course, you'd put in your own. And just put in an account number here. Now here's where you can save this payment source for future use. And so I'm going to choose yes. So it'll save that in our payment sources. And the payment date is May 13th today. I can choose to pay it into the future if I wanted to. So if your payment isn't due until the end of the month, you could choose that date. For the purpose of the webinar, though, I'll just use today's date. Confirm the amount. And almost ready to submit, but I'm only going to show you one more thing. For that payment to get credited as payment today, you must authorize the payment before 4 p.m. Central Time on the payment due date for timely payment. So please keep that in mind as you make your payments. All right, I'm going to submit this payment. And so now you'll see I got the second confirmation number. Again, for sales and use tax, I file, I get a confirmation number. I pay, I get a confirmation number. All right, I'm going to return home. And I'm going to show you one more thing here. If you do need to amend a past processed sales and use tax return, you can click on File, Pay, View Returns. And you can see here we've got a submission that we just did. But if I wanted to amend the first quarter sales and use tax return for whatever reason, I would click on the period. And then I would click on File, View, or Amend Return. And click on Amend. And now I can change this these first quarter amounts to what they should be. So to correct in a sales and use tax return, you're amending it, and you can do that anytime. One other thing I'll point out is if you're filing and paying a sales and use tax return or WT7 or even an amended return, you can save a draft at any time. So if I'm going to come back to this, I can click on Save Draft, and I'll say Finish Later. And what happens now is if I go to my Submissions tab that I mentioned I'd be going back to, if I click on More and click on Search Submissions, so now we have a draft submission where I can return to and finish amending that return. I've got a pending tab now that shows the return and the payment for sales and use tax. and then a processed return to show the electronic delivery options from earlier and a deleted tab. So, all right, well, that's all I have for sales and use tax. I am going to turn it over to Nicole, and she's going to talk to you about withholding tax.
Thank you, Tom. Now we'll look at filing a W-T6 deposit report and the W-T7 annual reconciliation. From the home page, you're going to click on File, Pay, View Returns for the withholding tax account. If you're an annual filer for withholding tax, you're not required to file W-T6 reports during the year, so you can just file the W-T7 at the end of the year without filing a W-T6 report. In most cases, you'll want to file and pay the W-T6 by locating the File W-T6 Return option listed on this page. If you need to file a W-T6 with a zero amount, you can click on the Yes option and continue. We'll enter in an amount for withholding. If you're just filing without making a payment, you can choose the No option for making the payment. In most cases, though, a payment is made while filing, so we'll continue to file and pay by clicking the Next option. We always want to know if you would like a confirmation email, so we'll select Yes and hit the Next button. In our example, we're going to choose bank account. But let's take a look at the other two options first. To pay by a different method, such as a credit card, you'll need to submit the return and then choose Make a Payment from the confirmation page to pay with a credit card. To mail a payment, you'll need to submit the return and then choose Print Voucher from the confirmation page. And then we'll hit Next. For payment, we'll actually use the saved payment source from paying the sales and use tax. If you want, you can choose a payment date in the future, but for our example, we're just going to choose today's date. You'll want to confirm the amount and hit Submit. You'll always have to agree to the attestation to move forward. Now, this is our confirmation page. Notice how this is different from filing and paying sales and use tax. For withholding tax, we have a single confirmation number for filing and making the payment. We'll click OK and we'll return to our home page. We'll go over a quick review on how to amend a previously filed W-T6. So we'll do the same thing, click on the File, Pay, View Returns. What you'll want to do is click in the actual period. Up in the top right-hand corner, File, View or Amend Return, and View or Amend the return. So this is $200. You would only amend the return if you need to amend the return down to a lesser amount. So you would just put in the correct withholding and just a brief explanation. If you need to add more withholding for a specific period, you would just click on the date and actually just file another one to make up the difference. Now let's return to the withholding account and we'll review how to file the WT7 annual withholding tax reconciliation. So the same action, you'll click on the File, Pay, View Returns, and then there's a link, File WT7. It does just give a brief explanation here if you ever would file before the end of the year, but we'll click Next just to show a quick example. Please note the filing tips section where you can get more information, including form instructions, common questions, EFW to file transfer, and of course, any withholding tax updates. Your WT7 for 2025 annual reconciliation and wage and information statements aren't due until January 31st of 2026. But we'll just do a quick overview here. We will offer several webinars in January of 2026 as refreshers as well. First, we'll discuss a scenario where you have no withholding tax to report on your WT7 reconciliation, but have W-2s to report. For this scenario, you'll want to answer no to the question, do you have Wisconsin withholding to report? And submit the WT7 with 0 amounts. However, we still need the W-2s, and you can submit them to us from the My Tax account from the W-2 1099 entry link from the home page. I'll go over that in just a few minutes. Before we continue though, let's discuss the submission of W-2s and 1099s for Wisconsin. If you have 1099s with Wisconsin withholding tax, you would report those on the WT7 itself. If you have 1099s to submit to us that don't have withholding, don't report those 1099s on the WT7. Please only list information returns on the WT7 withholding reconciliation that have Wisconsin withholding tax. We do still need those information returns, however, they just don't need to be listed on the WT7. If you have W-2s or 1099s that you need to submit to us that don't have withholding, we'll show you how to do that a little later. If you have further questions, please use the links in the filing tips section or call our customer service at 608-261-5338 for more information. For now, let's keep our example simple and file a WT7 with a single W-2 with withholding. There are several options to send the W-2s to the department. The first option is to key in the W-2 right now while we're filing the WT7 by checking the My Tax Account box. The second option is via file transfer. Please note that you'd select file transfer if you've already entered in the wage and information returns using the Enter W-2 1099 information link prior to filing the WT7. Otherwise, you would select file transfer if you're going to upload an electronic file to us. If you need further assistance or have any additional questions about electronic file transfers, click on the EFW2 file transfer link on this page. If you have 9 or less than a single type of W-2 or information return, you can mail them to us without penalty, and you would select the paper option. For our example, though, we will key in the W-2 while filing the WT-7. So the question here, are you entering any W-2s? You would click yes. Then scroll down and you'll find the Add W-2 link. From here, we'll fill out the information for the employee's W-2, including the Social Security number, the name, you notice anything with the red asterisk is a required field, and we would need that filled out. Once you have the employee's information, you'll scroll down and you'll see the Enter Financial Information. For our example, we'll save just a little time today. We're just going to key in box 1, and then we'll scroll down to enter the state wage information section, where we will enter the most important information on this W-2, the state wages and the income tax withheld. Once completed, you'll click the Add button. Now from here, we can click on the pencil icon here to the left and edit the W-2 we just entered. Or we can click the double paper icon to copy the previous W-2, or we can click the X icon to delete the W-2 altogether. If we had additional W-2s to key in, we could click the Add W-2 icon. But for our purposes, we only have one, so we'll just click the next option. Are you entering any 1099s? We don't have any 1099s with withholding to report, so we'll click Next through the 1099 miscellaneous, the 1099 NECs, the 1099Rs. Now, because we chose to key in the W-2 in the My Tax account, you'll notice lines 1 through 5 are already pre-filled for us based on what we entered in the previous steps. Now, since this form isn't due until January of next year, we'll just save the draft and finish without the submitting. So I'm going to choose just finish later. You could always continue editing if you're in real time. Now, we're going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to show you that how to enter W-2s standalone if you would not have withholding or if you did not want to key them in the WT-7. So from the home page, you'll scroll down to the withholding tax section, and you'll find the link here, Enter W-2 1099 information. If you need to report W-2s or 1099s without withholding, or another example, file a corrected W-2 or 1099, this is the link that you'll want to use to enter the W-2 1099 information. This tool can be especially helpful for those of you that don't have a withholding tax account with us, but need to submit W-2s or 1099s to the department that don't have Wisconsin withholding. Keep in mind, this does satisfy the state filing requirement, not the federal filing requirement for information returns. We'd also like to note these forms are not printable. But let's see what it looks like to key in a 1099 NEC. So we'll want to key in the year. We are not entering in a corrected W-2, so you'll hit Next. Now we'll scroll through until we find the correct link to add a 1099 NEC. Just like the W-2, We'll start by keying in the recipient's information, just like that, the Social Security number, name, Washington, where's Wisconsin? All right, so we have the information of the employee, and then we'll key in all of the financial information for the form. So box 1, and then we'll skip to box 7, the state income. And then just like the W-2, you click the add button. If you had more, same link, but we'll just have one today. If you would have several forms to key in, or you get interrupted while working on this, you can save the draft and continue editing, which will save the draft in your entries in case you have to take a phone call or the app simply times out. If you're going to leave and continue later, you'll want to choose finish later, and you can still come back and pick up right where you left off. You'll be able to pick up later by accessing the Search Submissions link from the More tab on the home page. On how to access that submission, just like I previously stated, you'll find the More tab, and then on the left-hand side, you'll want to search your submissions. And here is everything I've actually done today. Everything was saved. My return, my W-T7 here, and the W-2 entry. If I wanted to pick up where I left off, you'll click on the link up in the top right-hand corner, continue editing, and you can see my saved 1099 right here, and I can just continue on. Well, that's all for withholding. So let's send it back to Tom for a few closing remarks.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you to everyone for joining us. If you have any more questions, please use the contact information on the screen. We'll stick around for a few minutes to finish answering the questions in the chat queue. There's also a brief exit survey when you leave the webinar, but before we go, just a couple of reminders. Whenever your email or contact information changes, please update it on the Manage My Profile page. Please don't share your login information or password with any other My Tax Account users. If you want another person to have access to the business tax accounts, have them register for their own My Tax account. A recorded version of this webinar will be available shortly on our training page. Feel free to share it with colleagues who could not attend the webinar today. Thanks again for attending, and have a great day.